She should have never come home that night. But when Emma Anderson walked through the door, she found more than just her fiancé, Jin Woo Park, waiting for her. Something was off. The house felt colder. The Christmas lights, once warm and inviting, flickered in the dim silence. The soft hum of the kitchen light and the faint smell of coffee barely registered as she stepped further inside. And then, she overheard him. Jin was making plans with someone else, Hana, a name she'd never heard before. And yet, it wasn't just an affair, it was a betrayal in the making. But let me back up to the moment everything changed. It wasn't just a phone call that shattered her world. It was what she discovered next that would lead her into a deadly game she never saw coming. And it all started on that Christmas Eve. She was the woman who always had a plan, always in control. But tonight, she'd lose it all. And that wasn't even the worst part. Because everything she thought she knew was about to unravel. Hit that subscribe button if you're ready for a journey full of twists, turns, and shocking betrayals. Let me know where you're watching from in the comments. And don't forget to like and share, because you won't believe what happens next. Stay tuned. Emma had always prided herself on being the one who kept it together, the one who had a plan for everything. But tonight, standing in the cold entryway of the house they'd shared for 3 years, she felt anything but in control. The laughter from the Christmas party, still fresh in her mind, now seemed distant, like a memory from another life. She took a step forward, the sound of her boots on the hardwood floor unnervingly loud in the silence. Her eyes scanned the room, the smell of coffee still hanging in the air, the faint glimmer of the Christmas tree lights casting shadows along the walls. The soft hum of the kitchen light flickered, almost nervously, as if it, too, could feel the tension in the air. Her breath caught in her throat as she heard it again, the low murmur of Jin's voice, muffled but unmistakable. Coming from the living room. It was his usual voice, warm and familiar. But tonight, there was something colder in it. She froze at the threshold of the hallway, her fingers tightening around the edge of the wall as she leaned closer. "I'll take care of it," Jin said, his voice strained. "Don't worry. We'll meet tomorrow. I'll figure it out." She could hear the soft rustle of fabric, the unmistakable sound of someone moving around. But who? "You'll be happy, I promise." The words were like a slap to her chest. She wanted to move, to confront him right then and there. But something held her back. Something deep within her urged her to stay silent, to listen just a little longer. What was happening here? What was he hiding from her? Her mind raced as she strained to catch more of the conversation, but her thoughts were a mess. How long had this been going on? Was this about her? Or someone else? "I need you to trust me," Jin whispered, his tone almost pleading. "It'll all be over soon. You'll see." That was it. That was the line that sent a chill racing down her spine. There was no more doubt in her mind. This wasn't just some misunderstanding. It wasn't just a late-night work call. It was something much darker. Something that she could never have imagined. And Hana wasn't just some casual friend, as Jin had always claimed. She was the woman who held his promises, his future, in her hands. She stumbled backward, the air suddenly thick and heavy in her lungs. The world around her seemed to spin, everything blurring into one twisted, surreal vision. A soft ringing began in her ears, and for a second, she thought she might pass out right there in the hallway. Her hands trembled as she clutched her phone, her thumb grazing over the screen. And just then, a text message popped up on the screen. It was from Maria, her best friend. "You need to see this. It's not what you think." She froze, staring at the words as if they had been carved into the very fabric of her soul. The phone slipped from her hand, landing with a soft thud on the floor, but she didn't hear it. All she could hear was the pounding of her own heart in her ears. What had she walked into? What had Jin been hiding from her? And why did she feel like this moment, this night, had been leading to this one exact point? This one unthinkable discovery. "Jin," she whispered, barely able to speak his name. But there was no answer. She had to know more. She had to understand what was happening what had been happening all along. The truth had been sitting in front of her, right there under her nose. And now, she couldn't run from it anymore. Her hand shot out, grasping the phone as if it were the only lifeline she had left. She unlocked it with a shaking thumb, eyes scanning for Maria's message. The words felt like a gut punch. They were the beginning of everything crashing down around her. And somehow, she knew, they would only be the beginning of the chaos to come. The screen of the phone blinked back at her with another message. She hesitated for a moment, breath catching in her throat, before swiping the message open. And then her world tilted for the second time that night. The door closed softly behind her as Emma stood in the hallway, her mind reeling from the conversation she had just overheard. The phone screen in her hand seemed to burn with the weight of its message, the words almost too much to process. For a moment, she just stood there, frozen in place. How had it all come to this? How had she been so blind? Her heart pounded in her chest, each beat echoing in her ears like a drum. She felt the sting of betrayal deep in her bones. Her hands shook as she gripped the edges of her phone, her thumb brushing over the screen again and again, searching for something to make sense of what she had just heard. But there was nothing. Nothing that could explain the coldness that had settled in her stomach, or the emptiness that had filled the space between her and Jin. She needed to think. She needed space to breathe, to process. But her mind wouldn't stop, the questions racing faster than her thoughts could catch them. Who was Hana? What was Jin really hiding from me? Emma whispered to herself, the words tasting bitter on her tongue. The party, the laughter, everything that had felt so right just hours ago now felt like a cruel joke. Asterisk. She walked to the kitchen, the silence of the house pressing in on her, suffocating her with each step. She reached the counter, where the coffee pot sat, still warm, a single cup of untouched coffee beside it. She poured herself a cup, the warmth of the liquid doing little to ease the chill spreading through her veins. As she took a sip, the weight of the night bore down on her. She could feel the pull of everything she had built with Jin, their future, their promises, the life they had planned together. It all felt like a lie now. Was it always a lie? Was she just another part of the deception? Her phone buzzed again, pulling her from her spiraling thoughts. This time, it was a message from Maria, her best friend who had always been there for her. The one person Emma had confided in about Jin's strange behavior over the last few months. Maria had always brushed it off, telling her to trust him, to be patient. But now, the message read, "You need to come over, Emma. I have something that will make everything make sense." Her fingers trembled as she typed a quick reply. "What do you mean? What's going on, Maria?" She hit send before the thought could fully form. But Maria's response came back almost instantly. "Meet me at my place in 30 minutes. Trust me, it's all connected." The message hit Emma like a punch to the gut. Connected? Connected to what? What was going on that Maria wasn't telling her? She didn't want to go. She didn't want to face anyone, especially not after what had just happened. But deep down, she knew she couldn't let this go. Not now, not when the pieces of her life were falling apart, one after the other. She had to know what Maria meant. She had to find the truth, even if it destroyed her. And so, against every instinct telling her to stay, Emma grabbed her coat, slipping it on in a daze, her mind still racing. The cold air outside hit her like a slap in the face as she walked to her car, the night wrapped in darkness around her. The world felt quieter than usual, the silence suffocating, the weight of her discoveries pressing down on her chest. As she drove, her thoughts kept spiraling back to Jin and Hana. What was their connection? How long had this been going on? And more importantly, why had Jin kept it from her? The answers felt just out of reach, like the truth was a puzzle she couldn't quite solve. The guilt gnawed at her, the guilt of trusting him so completely, of allowing herself to believe that everything was fine when, in reality, it was all a house of cards waiting to collapse. The drive felt endless, each mile stretching out before her like a slow countdown to something she wasn't ready to face. But when she arrived at Maria's apartment, the front door swung open before she could even ring the bell. Maria stood there, her expression serious, a hint of something unsettling in her eyes. It was as if she already knew what Emma was about to hear. Maria stepped aside to let her in, and Emma followed without a word. She didn't need to speak. Her mind was too filled with questions to make sense of any of it. They sat down in the living room, the dim lighting casting long shadows across the walls. Maria handed her a glass of water, and for a moment, there was silence between them, thick and heavy. Finally, Emma spoke, her voice trembling. "What's going on, Maria? Why did you want me to come here? What do you know about Jin and Hana?" Maria hesitated for a moment, her eyes darting to the door as if she were waiting for someone else. Then, she took a deep breath and spoke. Her words slow and deliberate. "You're not going to like what I'm about to tell you, Emma. But Jin isn't who you think he is. This whole thing, it's not just about him and Hana. It's much bigger. You need to hear the truth before you go any further with him." The room seemed to grow colder as Maria spoke, the air thick with the weight of her words. Emma felt as though the ground beneath her was giving way, the realization of what was coming hitting her harder than anything she'd ever imagined. What Maria said next would shatter everything Emma thought she knew about the man she loved. The words Maria spoke hung in the air like a weight neither of them could shake off. For a moment, Emma felt as though she couldn't breathe. The walls of the room seemed to close in around her, and her thoughts swirled, too jumbled to form a single coherent question. What was Maria talking about? What truth was she hiding? Maria took a sip of her water, her gaze steady but filled with something Emma couldn't quite place. Pity? Maybe? Regret? "Emma," Maria began, her voice quiet but heavy with meaning. "I think you need to know exactly who Jin is and how deep this runs. You've seen the surface, but there's more. Much more." Every word Maria spoke was like a slow, deliberate twist of the knife in Emma's chest. She had known something was off, but now she was being told no, forced to confront the truth she'd been avoiding. Maria leaned forward, her voice lowering even further, as if they were sharing a secret that couldn't be overheard. Jin's family. They've been involved in things you don't even want to imagine. His connection with Hana, it's not just about an affair. It's part of a much larger game. Her words struck Emma like a physical blow. Her mind raced, trying to process the implications. Jin, the man she had built a life with, the man she trusted more than anyone, was connected to something dark, something dangerous. But Maria wasn't finished. She didn't give her time to react. Instead, she dropped another bombshell. "The real reason he's been hiding things from you is that Hana has been pulling his strings. They're not just involved in some romance. It's all about control, money, and power. You're a pawn in their game, Emma, and you've been blind to it the whole time." The room spun. The walls seemed to tilt around Emma. A faint ringing echoed in her ears. Her stomach twisted with nausea as the images of Jin and Hana in her mind collided. All the lies, all the secrets, all the moments of doubt she'd dismissed, now seemed to line up in front of her, sharp and clear. The man she loved, the man she had trusted with her heart, had been hiding behind a veil of lies. And it wasn't just about Hana. It was about something far more sinister. She opened her mouth to speak, but no words came out. Her thoughts were a blur, the shock too overwhelming to process. Maria was watching her, waiting for her to say something, to ask more questions. But Emma was paralyzed, caught in the flood of revelation. "So, what now?" Emma finally managed to croak, her voice barely above a whisper. Her hands were clammy as she gripped the edge of the coffee table, desperate for something to hold on to. "What am I supposed to do with this? Truth? Asterisk. Asterisk." Maria stood up, her expression a mix of sorrow and resolve. "You need to leave, Emma. You need to walk away from him before you get dragged into something you can't get out of. He's already made his choice. And if you stay, you'll just be swept away by it all." The word struck deep, like a warning from someone who had already seen this play out before. Emma's breath caught in her throat. She had always believed that love could fix everything. She had believed in Jin, in their future, in the life they'd promised to build together. But now, as the pieces of the puzzle clicked into place, she realized how wrong she'd been. The weight of Maria's words sank in. If what she said was true, Jin had never really been hers. She had been an illusion, a distraction in a game much bigger than anything she had ever imagined. And Hana? Emma asked, her voice hoarse. What part does she play in all this? Why is she involved? Maria hesitated, her eyes flicking to the window as though she could see something Emma couldn't. Hana is the key. She's been working with his family all along. They need her for something that involves Jin's future. But it's not just about love or marriage. She's here to secure his future, and her own. She's not the victim here, Emma. Jin is just as much a part of it as she is. And you've been caught in the middle, whether you realize it or not. The truth hit Emma like a slap across the face. She felt dizzy, as though the floor had dropped out beneath her. She had been the fool, the one who had trusted blindly. And now, it seemed, she had walked straight into the center of a web she couldn't escape from. What do I do now? Emma asked again, her voice trembling with uncertainty, her hands shaking at her sides. How can I just walk away? Asterisk. Maria walked over to her, placing a gentle hand on her shoulder. You have to decide what's more important, Emma. The life you've built with him, or the truth. There's no way out of this without a sacrifice. The words echoed in Emma's mind as she sat there, the weight of her choices pressing down on her. She had never felt more alone. But she knew one thing for sure. Now Jin was never going to be the man she thought he was. And whatever path she chose from here, there would be no going back. I have to go, Emma said, her voice shaking with determination she hadn't felt until now. She stood up and grabbed her bag from the floor, her hands moving with mechanical precision. She didn't know what she was going to do next, but she knew that for once in her life, she wasn't going to let someone else control her fate. Not Jin, not Hana, not anyone. As she stepped out into the cold night air, the weight of the truth followed her like a shadow. The path ahead was unclear, but one thing was certain: her life would never be the same, and neither would Jin's. The cold night air bit at Emma's skin as she stepped into her car, the engine roaring to life with a power that matched the pounding in her chest. Her hands were still trembling as she gripped the steering wheel, her mind in chaos. Maria's words echoed over and over in her mind, each repetition sinking her deeper into a sea of confusion. She had always prided herself on being able to handle anything that life threw at her. But now, everything she thought she knew was crumbling beneath her feet. Jin was no longer the man she had fallen in love with. He was a stranger, and she had no idea who he really was anymore. The drive home felt endless, each minute stretching into eternity. She barely noticed the streets as she drove, her thoughts consumed by the overwhelming revelations. She couldn't even begin to understand how Jin had gotten tangled up in something so dangerous. How long had he been hiding his true self from her? By the time Emma pulled into the driveway, the weight of her thoughts had become suffocating. She sat in her car for a moment, staring blankly at the house in front of her. It was the same house they had planned to fill with memories, to build a life in. But now, it felt like a prison, each brick and window a reminder of the lie she'd been living. She closed her eyes, taking a deep breath as she tried to steady herself. She needed answers, and the only person who could give them to her was Jin. But what could she even ask him now? As Emma walked toward the front door, her mind raced with possibilities. She could confront him now, demand the truth, everything Maria had told her. Or she could walk away, leave it all behind and never look back. She wasn't sure she could do either. The door swung open as she approached, and there he was, Jin, standing in the doorway, his expression unreadable. There was something different about him tonight. He looked more tired, more broken than he had earlier that evening. But Emma couldn't bring herself to feel sympathy for him, not now. We need to talk, Emma said, her voice steady but sharp. The decision to confront him finally made. It wasn't just about her heart anymore, it was about her future. And she couldn't afford to be weak. Not now. Asterisk. He didn't say anything at first, just stood there, his eyes locked on hers, as if he was waiting for her to back down. But she didn't. She refused to be intimidated. She stepped inside, moving past him without a second glance, heading straight for the living room. She needed distance. She needed space to think. Jin followed her in, his footsteps hesitant, as though he wasn't sure if he should even be here. He looked at her, his face pained, his eyes filled with a mix of guilt and regret that only made her anger grow. "Emma," he began, his voice low, "I didn't mean for this to happen. I never wanted to hurt you." "Then why did you?" Emma shot back, her voice cold. "Why did you lie to me? Why didn't you tell me the truth?" The words burned as they left her mouth, but they needed to be said. She needed to know why he had hidden so much from her, why he had let her believe that they were building a life together when, in reality, he had been building something else entirely. Jin ran a hand through his hair, his face twisting in pain. "I never wanted you to be part of this. You. Asterisk, part of what, Jin?" Emma demanded, her voice rising, her fists clenched at her sides. "Part of your lies? Part of your family's messed up business? Part of the game you've been playing behind my back?" Jin's eyes flicked to the floor, the guilt in them now unmistakable. He opened his mouth as if to speak, but nothing came out at first. Finally, he looked up at her, his expression hardening as he spoke, his voice barely above a whisper. Asterisk. "I never wanted to get you involved, Emma. But I couldn't stop it. It was never just about me. It was about them, my family, and Hana. You don't understand. It's bigger than us. I had no choice." The words hit her like a slap. Jin had been forced into this, by his family? And Hana, the woman who had appeared out of nowhere, the woman Emma had never trusted, was part of something much bigger? "What do you mean, bigger than us?" Emma asked, her voice trembling now, but not with fear, anger, confusion, and betrayal. "What are you talking about, Jin? What are you really involved in?" He stood there, silent, his shoulders slumping as if the weight of the world was pressing down on him. Emma could see it in his eyes. He was broken. He was trying to hold it together, but the truth was too much to bear. He had never wanted this life. But now, it seemed, there was no way out for him. "You don't understand," Jin repeated, his voice hoarse. "It's not just about us anymore. It's about power, control. My family will never let me go. I was supposed to marry Hana. I was supposed to do this. You were never supposed to know." The words hung in the air, a sickening truth settling over Emma. She felt the room close in around her, the weight of Jin's confession suffocating her. Everything they had been through together, every promise, every moment, they were all meaningless. This wasn't love. It never was. And then it hit her, the realization that everything had been a lie. A carefully constructed illusion built by Jin's family to trap him. And worse, Hana was at the center of it all, pulling the strings, controlling everything he did. She was just another pawn in their game. Emma's chest tightened, the pain of betrayal seeping into her bones, but beneath that, something else grew. Something darker. She couldn't let this go. Not now. Not ever. "I'm leaving," Emma whispered, her voice cold, her decision final. She wasn't going to stay and let Jin's lies destroy her anymore. But as she turned to leave, Jin stepped forward, his hand reaching out to stop her. Asterisk. "Emma, don't follow me," Emma snapped, her heart racing as she walked out the door. The storm was coming, and she wasn't going to be the one caught in the middle. The days that followed were nothing like Emma had imagined. The world outside her door seemed to carry on without missing a beat, but inside, everything felt broken, shattered beyond repair. The house that had once felt like a home now felt like a cage, each creak of the floorboards a reminder of the life she was losing. The silence between Jin and her was deafening, filled with unspoken words, a tension that neither of them could escape. She threw herself into work, into everything that didn't remind her of him, of the life she'd thought she had. But it wasn't enough. The images of Jin and Hana, the lies, the betrayal, they kept coming back, like ghosts, haunting every corner of her mind. But life had a way of moving forward, even when you didn't want it to. It was just over a week later when she received the call. Her heart dropped the second she saw the name on her screen, Jin. She had been avoiding him, letting the silence stretch between them, hoping that, with enough distance, the pain would dull. But it hadn't. And now, as the phone rang again, the need to confront him, to finally face everything, washed over her like a tidal wave. She hesitated, her fingers hovering over the screen. But then, with a deep breath, she answered. "Jin," she said, her voice colder than she'd meant it to be. "What do you want?" There was a long pause on the other end. Just enough for Emma to wonder if he was even going to speak. And then, finally, his voice came through, weak and pleading. "I need to see you," Jin said, his words rushed, almost panicked. "There's something you don't know. Something important. Please, just give me a chance to explain." The pain in his voice was unmistakable, but it wasn't enough to undo the damage he'd done. Emma knew this was the moment she had to make a choice, whether to walk away completely or hear him out. But the truth was, part of her was still holding on, hoping that somewhere beneath all the lies, there was a shred of the man she'd fallen in love with. "I'm not sure I can trust you anymore, Jin," Emma whispered, the words cutting through her like glass. "You've lied to me, manipulated me, and used me as a pawn in your family's game. Why would I give you a chance now?" There was another pause, heavier this time, like Jin was weighing his next words carefully, choosing his approach. "Because I'm not the one pulling the strings," he said, his voice raw. "You think Hana is the one behind all this, but you're wrong. Who's been orchestrating everything from the very beginning." His words hit her like a punch to the gut, the realization dawning on her slowly. She thought she had uncovered the truth, but now, Jin was telling her there was even more to the story, more lies buried deep beneath the surface. "Who?" Emma asked, her voice barely a whisper, the anticipation building like a crescendo. She was ready to hear it, ready to face whatever came next, even if it tore her apart. "My father," Jin replied, his voice thick with regret. "He's the one who's been controlling everything. He made Hana his pawn, and he made me one too. It's all been for the family's legacy, for the business, and now, his voice faltered. "Now, I'm stuck in a mess that I don't know how to get out of." Her heart skipped a beat. Jin's father, the very man Emma had thought was an ally, a mentor, was at the center of it all. He was the mastermind behind the manipulation, behind the lies, behind Hana's calculated involvement. The walls that had seemed so solid just moments ago began to crumble, and Emma felt the ground shift beneath her feet. "So, what do you want from me?" Emma asked, her voice shaking now. "What am I supposed to do with all of this? You've dragged me into your family's mess, and now you expect me to just forgive you?" "No, I don't expect you to forgive me," Jin said quickly. "I don't deserve that. But you deserve the truth. And you deserve to know that I'm not who I've appeared to be. I'm not just a part of this. I've been trapped in it." The words left a bitter taste in her mouth. She wanted to scream, to tell him that it didn't matter, that he had crossed a line that couldn't be undone. But the truth was, she wasn't sure she could walk away. "Not yet. I'll meet you," Emma said, her voice strained with emotion. "But don't expect me to forgive you. I just need to know the full truth. I need to understand what's really going on. And then, we'll figure out what comes next." She hung up the phone before he could respond, the weight of her decision sinking in. She wasn't ready to face Jin yet, but she knew she had no choice. She had to know everything. She had to understand why he had done what he had. And the truth? It was going to hurt more than she could ever imagine. The day passed in a blur. each minute dragging by slower than the last. Emma couldn't focus at work, couldn't concentrate on anything. The thought of meeting Jin again, of facing the truth about his father's involvement, gnawed at her insides. She couldn't shake the feeling that the truth was still slipping through her fingers, like sand through an open palm. By the time evening came, she was sitting in her car outside a cafe, the familiar knot of anxiety tightening in her stomach. The place was quiet, just as she had requested, with dim lighting that made the space feel intimate and private. But all she could focus on was the conversation that was about to unfold. She took a deep breath, trying to calm herself as she waited for Jin to arrive. The air inside the car was thick, and her pulse raced faster than she wanted to admit. He'd said he was going to tell her everything, but could she believe him now? Could she believe anything he said after all the lies? The door of the cafe opened, and Jin walked in, his face drawn and pale, as though the weight of the world had been placed on his shoulders. The man she had once seen as strong, confident, and capable now looked like a shell of himself. He spotted her almost immediately, and their eyes met across the room. But instead of running to her like she had always imagined, he walked slowly, cautiously. There was no warmth in his gaze, no affection, just a hollow emptiness that matched the chasm growing between them. "You're here," Jin said quietly, as he slid into the seat across from her, his voice low, almost apologetic. "I thought you wouldn't come." "I almost didn't," Emma replied, her voice tight. She forced herself to look at him, to meet his eyes, though it felt like she was looking at a stranger. "But I need answers, Jin. You told me about your father, about how he's the one pulling the strings. I need to understand what that means, what part I play in all of this." He stared at her for a moment, as though searching for the right words, but there were none. What could he say that would make her understand? He had been lying to her for so long, deceiving her in ways he hadn't even fully grasped himself. "It means," Jin began, swallowing hard, "it means that everything I've done, everything I've told you, it was never really my choice. My father, he has control over every part of my life, my career, my marriage, even my future. He's been orchestrating all of it, pulling the strings without me even realizing it." The words felt like a punch to her gut. She had heard them before, but hearing him say them aloud made the reality even worse. She had never imagined Jin as someone who could be so powerless, so trapped. But the truth was clear now. He wasn't the man she thought he was. "And Hana?" Emma asked, her voice trembling with a mix of frustration and disbelief. "What role does she play in all of this? Was she just part of your family's plan too?" "Yes," Jin admitted, his eyes dropping to the table. "She was never just someone I fell in love with. I was forced into it, Emma. Forced to make her believe we had something real, when all I wanted was to be with you." "So, you've been lying to both of us," Emma said, her words cold, her chest tightening as she spoke. "You played us both, kept us in the dark, and now you want me to just forgive you? To believe that you never had a choice?" Her voice cracked slightly at the end, but she quickly steadied herself, determined not to show him how much it hurt. Jin's face twisted in guilt, but there was something more beneath it, something darker, something that made Emma's stomach turn. He wasn't just ashamed of his actions, he was afraid. And Emma realized, for the first time, that Jin wasn't the only one who had been manipulated. She had been, too. In a way, she was just as trapped as he was. "I never wanted to hurt you," Jin whispered, his voice raw. "But I don't know how to get out of this. I'm stuck, Emma. My father's going to make me marry Hannah. He's going to make me do everything he says, or he'll ruin me. And I can't let that happen. I can't lose everything I've worked for, everything my family has built." The confession hit her like a slap. Jin was caught between two worlds, neither of which would ever let him go. His loyalty to his family, his obligation to their legacy, was stronger than his love for her. And Hannah, she was just a pawn in a game he couldn't escape. But Emma wasn't ready to give up on him just yet. Not completely. The love she'd felt for Jin still lingered, even if it was beginning to fade under the weight of the truth. She wasn't going to let him off the hook so easily, though. "So, what's your plan, Jin?" she asked, her voice icy. Are you just going to let your father dictate your life forever? Let him control everything? Or are you finally going to take control of your own future? Jin looked up, his eyes flashing with something Emma hadn't seen before: defiance. For the first time in their entire conversation, he looked like he was ready to fight, ready to do whatever it took to break free of his father's hold. I'm not sure yet, Jin replied, his voice steady now, more resolute. But as Emma stared at him, a new realization settled in. Jin didn't have the power to save her. Not anymore. The tension in the air between Emma and Jin was thick enough to cut with a knife. The words they had exchanged, the lies unveiled, and the bitter truths shared all hung between them like a heavy fog. But for Emma, as much as she wanted to walk away, she couldn't. The part of her that still loved him refused to let go just yet. She needed to know more. She had to understand everything. Jin, Emma said quietly, her voice still shaky from everything she had learned. If you're really going to fight for us, you need to tell me everything. Who else is involved? Jin's face darkened as he shifted in his seat, the weight of the question pulling him back into the shadows. His hand clenched into a fist on the table, his knuckles white. It's not just my father, Jin admitted, his voice barely a whisper. It's my entire family. They've been controlling everything, my marriage, my career, everything. But they're not the ones pulling the strings. The real person behind all this is someone you never would have expected. Someone we both know. The words hung in the air like a ticking time bomb. Emma leaned forward, heart racing as she tried to process what Jin had just said. Who could it possibly be? Who in their lives could be manipulating them both? Her mind raced through the people in her life, wondering if she'd missed something all along. She thought she knew everyone close to her, but now, everything she thought she knew was unraveling. Who? Emma asked, her voice barely more than a whisper, her breath caught in her throat. Who's been pulling the strings behind everything? Tell me, Jin. I need to know. Jin's eyes flicked to the floor, as if he couldn't bring himself to look her in the eye anymore. It's my brother, Aaron. The name hit Emma like a punch to the gut. Aaron? Jin's brother? The quiet one? The one who had always stayed in the background, keeping his distance from both of them? Aaron? Emma repeated, her voice incredulous. You're telling me your brother has been behind all of this? Asterisk. Jin nodded slowly, his face filled with a kind of weary resignation. Yes. He's been the one orchestrating everything. He's been using me, using Hana, using my father to push his agenda. And I didn't even realize it until recently. Aaron's been manipulating the entire situation, playing everyone like a game of chess. The shock of the revelation hit Emma like a cold wave. Her mind raced as she tried to make sense of it all. Aaron had always been the one to stay out of the spotlight. He was the last person she ever expected to be involved in something so dark, so twisted. But now, it was clear that the entire plan, Jin's forced marriage, Hannah's involvement, and everything that had happened had been part of Aaron's carefully laid scheme. Why? Emma asked, her voice trembling with disbelief. Why would Aaron do this? What's his motive? Why use you like this? Asterisk. Because he wants everything, Jin said bitterly. He's been trying to take over the family business for years, but my father has always kept him in the shadows. Aaron thinks he deserves to be at the top, to have all the power, and to get that, he's been using me and Hana as pawns in his game. And Hana? Emma asked, her voice cold with the weight of the betrayal. What does she have to do with it? Asterisk. Jin hesitated before answering. She's been working with him. She's been feeding him information, using her relationship with me to get closer to the family. But I didn't know any of this until it was too late. Aaron's been playing both sides, manipulating us all. He's the one who set everything in motion from the very beginning. Emma's heart raced as the pieces started to fall into place. Jin had been nothing more than a puppet in Aaron's game. The man she had loved, the man she thought she knew, had been trapped in a web of lies spun by his own brother. And the truth of it all was worse than she could have imagined. How do you plan to stop him? Emma asked, her voice cold, each word cutting through the air. How do you fight back against someone like that? Asterisk. I don't know, Jin said, his voice filled with frustration and defeat. But I have to try. I have to fight for us. For the truth. But I can't do it alone, Emma. I need you to help me. Asterisk. Her breath caught in her throat. She had been so sure of what she had to do, of the decision she had made when she walked away. But now, as Jin looked at her with desperate eyes, asking for her help, something inside of her shifted. The anger, the betrayal, it was still there, sharp and raw. But the part of her that had loved him, that still loved him, fought to stay alive. I can't help you, Emma said quietly, but her voice was thick with emotion. I can't go back to the way things were. You lied to me. You've been lying to me this whole time. I can't just forgive that. Asterisk. But even as she said it, she knew that her words weren't final. She wasn't ready to walk away completely. She had to know everything. She had to understand the full extent of Aaron's plan before she could make her choice. I understand, Jin whispered, his face full of regret. But please, Emma, give me one chance. Let me prove that I'm still the man you thought I was. Let me fix this. Asterisk. For the first time since the betrayal, Emma saw a flicker of the man she had fallen in love with. But was it too late? The weight of the decision felt like 1,000 pounds pressing down on Emma's chest. The room, despite its warmth, felt like an empty void. Jin was sitting across from her, his eyes pleading, the same eyes that once held all her love. But now they seemed distant, clouded by the lies, by the web of manipulation spun by his own brother. The truth hung between them like a wall, and no matter how hard Emma tried to break it down, it remained solid, impenetrable. How could she ever trust him again? How could she let herself be dragged into a battle that wasn't hers to fight? You need to make a decision, Emma, Jin said quietly, his voice filled with desperation. I know I've betrayed you, but I'm not the person you think I am. I never wanted to hurt you. Please, I'm asking you to help me take back control. But Emma wasn't ready to make that decision, not yet. She stood up, the tension in the air, so thick it felt suffocating. Her mind was a war zone, battling between the love she still had for Jin and the truth she could no longer ignore. She walked to the window, looking out at the darkening sky. She could feel the weight of the city pressing in around her, its lights blurred by the tears she refused to let fall. What was she supposed to do now? Her heart ached as she thought of everything they had shared, the late-night conversations, the quiet mornings, the dreams they had built together. But now, it felt like a cruel joke. The trust they'd built had been shattered, and no amount of apologies could glue the pieces back together. Could she really keep fighting for something that had already been broken beyond repair? Asterisk. She turned back to Jin, her face hardened by the realization of just how deep the betrayal ran. You don't get it, do you? She said, her voice low and steady. I can't just pretend this never happened. I can't ignore everything you've kept from me. You're asking me to trust you, to help you. But how can I, when you've already lied to me for so long? Asterisk. Jin's face crumpled, his hands balling into fists as if the frustration was too much for him to hold in. I know I've made mistakes. But I can't let Aaron win. If I don't do something, he'll destroy everything. My family. Our future. You. I can't let that happen. Emma, I can't let him take everything away from me, from us. She felt the fury rising in her chest, the fire of betrayal burning away any remnants of sympathy she had left for him. The man sitting in front of her, the man she had loved so deeply, was still just a pawn in a game he couldn't escape. Asterisk. I'm not a part of your game, Jin, Emma said, her voice steady, though every word tore at her heart. I'm not your salvation. You need to fight this on your own. You need to fight for yourself. She could see the way his shoulders sagged, the hopelessness in his eyes. For the first time since this nightmare began, Emma realized how trapped he really was. But that didn't change the fact that she was suffocating in his lies, and she couldn't breathe in this suffocating mess anymore. Then leave, Jin said softly, his voice breaking. Leave and never look back. If that's what you need, Emma, then I'll let you go. But don't expect me to stop loving you. No matter what happens, I'll never stop loving you. For a moment, Emma felt the weight of his words settle on her heart. She didn't know if she could walk away, not when there was still a part of her that wanted to believe in him, that wanted to fight for their love. But the other part of her, the one that had been betrayed, was already running out of reasons to stay. She turned toward the door, her hand on the handle. She could hear Jin's breath catch behind her, could feel his gaze burning into her back. The decision was hers to make: walk away, or stay and fight for a future that seemed to be slipping away like sand through her fingers. But as she opened the door, she stopped. Her heart felt as though it were being pulled in two directions, and no matter which way she turned, it felt like she would lose something: her love for Jin, or the respect for herself she had left. She wasn't ready for this, but she knew one thing: she could no longer ignore the truth. I need to find the truth, Jin, Emma said, her voice strained with emotion. I need to understand everything. If there's a way out of this, we'll find it together. But first, I need to know everything. She stepped out into the cold night air, the weight of her decision pressing down on her chest. It wasn't just about Jin anymore. It was about her, about finding herself in a world where everything she thought she knew had been turned upside down. And as she walked into the darkness, she knew that this was only the beginning. The truth wasn't just waiting for her to uncover, it was going to take everything she had to face it. The days blurred together in a haze of confusion and cold detachment. Emma stayed busy, throwing herself into work, surrounding herself with distractions in an attempt to outrun the thoughts that seemed to circle her constantly. The house felt empty without Jin, though. His absence lingered in the air like a thick fog, suffocating her at moments when the world grew still. She had told herself that walking away was the right choice, but deep down, she knew that the decision had not been hers to make entirely. Her heart was still entangled in the mess they had created together, and even though the walls she had built around her were high, the truth was that she wasn't ready to let go, not just yet. It was a week before she heard from Jin again. Her phone buzzed with a text late one evening, simple, direct, almost too casual for the gravity of what had happened between them. The message read, "Can we meet? I need to talk." For a moment, Emma stared at the message, her fingers hovering over the screen. She hadn't expected to hear from him so soon. Part of her had hoped he would stay away, give her the space she desperately needed. But the other part, the part that still cared, still hoped for answers, wanted to see him, to finally end this chapter of her life with some kind of closure. She took a deep breath, the decision hanging in the air. What could he possibly have left to say? Her finger tapped the screen, and she quickly typed back, "Where?" The reply came almost instantly. "The park. Tomorrow morning, 9 a.m. Please come. I need you to understand everything." The park, the place where they had shared some of their happiest moments, walks in the crisp fall air, laughter echoing through the trees, stolen kisses on quiet benches. It was the last place she wanted to meet him, but also the one place that still held some shred of warmth from their past. When morning came, Emma felt as if her mind was split in two. Half of her was determined to walk away, to put an end to this toxic cycle. The other half, the part that still wanted to believe that the love they had once shared could be salvaged, wanted to hear him out, wanted to know what had really been going on. She arrived at the park early, her feet crunching on the gravel path as she walked toward their usual spot. The sun was just beginning to rise, casting a soft golden light over the empty benches and winding trails. It felt like the world was holding its breath, as if waiting for the inevitable confrontation that was about to take place. And then she saw him. Jin was standing by the old oak tree, his shoulders slumped, his face pale. He looked like a man who had been carrying a weight far too heavy for him to bear, his body language betraying every ounce of exhaustion. When he saw her, his eyes flickered with a mixture of relief and fear. "Emma," he said, his voice low and strained. "Thank you for coming. I didn't know if you would." "You're lucky I came at all," Emma replied, her voice colder than she intended. But the anger inside her was too fresh to hide. She crossed her arms over her chest, staring at him as if he were a stranger, and in many ways, he was. Asterisk. He looked at her, his expression filled with regret. "I know. I understand that. But please, just let me explain. Everything. It's been a mess. I've been a fool, Emma. I've been letting Aaron control everything, and I should have seen it. But I didn't. I couldn't. And now I don't know how to fix it." She stepped closer, her eyes narrowing as she listened. But there was a part of her that wanted to believe him. She couldn't deny that she still cared for him, even after everything. But the doubt lingered, eating away at her resolve. "Fix it?" Emma repeated, her voice a mix of frustration and disbelief. "How? How can you fix this, Jin? After everything you've done? After everything I've learned? You want me to just forgive you? To pretend like none of this matters?" Jin's eyes flashed with pain. But there was something else in them too, determination, a resolve that hadn't been there before. It was like he was finally waking up from the fog that had clouded his mind for so long. "I don't expect you to forgive me," Jin said softly, "but I need you to understand that it wasn't just about me and Hana. It was about my family, Aaron, everything. You've been caught in the middle of something much bigger than you ever knew. Hana was never the problem, Aaron is, and I finally realized that. He's been manipulating everything from the start, using me, using you, using all of us to get what he wants." He reached out, his hand trembling slightly as he took a step toward her. But Emma took a step back, the distance between them growing as the weight of his words settled into her chest. "You expect me to believe you now?" Emma asked, her voice shaking with a mix of anger and hurt. "After everything, after all the lies, you want me to believe that it was Aaron all along? That you were just his pawn in this sick game?" Jin's face twisted with regret, and for the first time, Emma saw the vulnerability in him, the rawness that had been hidden behind his charming, calculated exterior. He wasn't the man she thought he was, and maybe he never had been. "I'm not asking you to believe me," Jin whispered. "I'm asking you to help me stop him. If you leave now, Aaron wins, and I can't let that happen. Not without you." The words hung in the air between them, a silent plea that echoed through the trees, through the park, through Emma's heart. Could she really walk away, knowing what was at stake? Or would she stay, face the truth, and try to untangle the mess Jin had created? Her heart raced as she looked at him. She had been through too much, been lied to for too long. But she couldn't ignore the part of her that still cared, still hoped. The question remained, was she willing to risk everything for a man who had already broken her? The silence between Emma and Jin felt like it stretched on forever, thick and heavy, suffocating them both. Her heart raced, every beat loud in her chest as she stood there, staring at him, this man who had once been her everything, now nothing more than a shadow of the man she thought she knew. Every part of her screamed to walk away, to leave him to face the consequences of his actions alone. But something kept her rooted to the spot, her feet unwilling to move, even though every instinct told her to run. "I can't believe this," Emma finally said, her voice shaking with a mix of disbelief and frustration. "You want me to help you take down your brother, Aaron? After everything? After you've lied to me for months, you want me to trust you again?" Jin opened his mouth to speak, but no words came out. Instead, he just stood there, his face full of guilt, his eyes pleading, begging for forgiveness, begging for her to believe in him again. And for the first time, Emma saw the full weight of his despair, the realization that everything he had once held dear, including her, was slipping through his fingers. "I know I don't deserve your trust," Jin said, his voice low and full of pain. I don't expect you to forgive me. But Aaron, he's going to destroy everything we've built. He's already ruined so many lives, and now he's trying to take mine. I need you to understand, this isn't just about me. It's about all of us. You're in danger too, Emma. Aaron has been watching us this whole time, controlling everything. And if we don't stop him now, he'll have us both where he wants us trapped. Her breath caught in her throat as the words hit her like a gut punch. Aaron wasn't just playing a game with Jin, he was playing with her life too. The truth was beginning to sink in. But it was too much to process all at once. How could Aaron have manipulated everything from the start? How could she have been so blind? What exactly are you asking me to do, Jin? Emma asked, her voice shaking with the weight of the question. You want me to help you take down your brother? To fight your own family? You want me to risk everything I've worked for to help you fix a mess you created? Jin's eyes softened, his desperation turning into something that looked like acceptance. He knew Emma had every right to be angry. Hell, she had every right to walk away and never look back. But that wasn't what he wanted. What he wanted, what he desperately needed, was for her to see the truth. To see him, not as the man who had betrayed her, but as the man who was fighting for their future, their love. I'm asking you to help me stop Aaron before he destroys everything, Jin repeated, his voice steady now, as if a sense of determination had begun to build within him. I can't do this alone. Aaron won't stop until he has everything. My family's empire, my future, our future. He'll use Hannah to get what he wants, and then he'll throw her away, just like he's used me. I'm asking you to help me save both of us from him. The reality of his words settled over Emma like a heavy cloud, pressing down on her chest. She had come here looking for answers, for closure. But instead, she was being dragged deeper into a web of deceit and betrayal that she hadn't even known existed. The life she had built with Jin seemed farther and farther away, slipping through her fingers, just like the truth. She wanted to say no, to walk away from this toxic mess once and for all. But something inside of her refused to let go. Maybe it was the part of her that still loved Jin, or maybe it was the part of her that couldn't stand the thought of Aaron winning, of him getting away with all the pain and manipulation he had caused. Whatever it was, she knew she couldn't just turn her back on this fight. I don't know how to do this, Emma said softly, her voice filled with uncertainty. I don't know if I can trust you again. But if we're going to fight Aaron, we need to be smart. We can't just charge in blindly. Jin's expression softened, a flicker of gratitude passing through his eyes. He had never asked for forgiveness. Not really. He knew he had done too much damage for that. But this was something different. This was the first step toward redemption. And even if Emma couldn't forgive him, he would fight with everything he had to prove that he was worth fighting for. We'll do it together, Jin said, his voice filled with quiet conviction. We'll figure it out. But we can't wait much longer. Aaron is already making his move. If we don't act soon, it will be too late. The truth was simple. Emma had never felt more lost, but she had never felt more alive either. The uncertainty was terrifying, but the desire to stop Aaron, to end the manipulation once and for all, burned in her like a fire. She didn't know if she could trust Jin again, but she knew that she couldn't turn away now, not with Aaron out there, waiting to destroy everything they had. As they sat in the dim light of the park, the cold morning air wrapping around them like a shroud, Emma felt something shift in her, a sense of purpose, a determination to fight for the truth, even if it meant facing the deepest betrayals of her life. Let's find a way to bring Aaron down, Emma said, her voice steady, the fire of resolve burning in her eyes. But we do this on my terms. No more lies, no more secrets. Jin nodded, his face filled with a mixture of relief and determination. They weren't out of the woods yet, but together, they might just have a chance to take back what had been stolen from them. But the road ahead was dangerous, and the game Aaron had been playing was far from over. The days bled into each other as Emma and Jin worked in the shadows, their plans slowly taking shape. They had no illusions about the danger they were in. Aaron had proven to be ruthless, his every move calculated to keep them in check. But as they dug deeper into his scheme, they began to see the cracks in his armor, the places where his confidence faltered. But even as they closed in on Aaron, Emma couldn't shake the nagging feeling that there was more to the story, more that they didn't know. Each day, her trust in Jin grew, but so did the doubts. Could she really risk everything for someone who had lied to her for so long? Could they take down Aaron without destroying everything they had left? The tension between them had been building, and every decision, every step they took, felt like it was leading them closer to an impossible choice. But they were too far gone now. There was no turning back. It was late one evening, the air thick with the promise of what was to come. Emma sat at the kitchen table, the weight of the situation pressing down on her. She hadn't seen Jin in hours. He'd gone out on an errand to meet an informant who might have the final piece of the puzzle. The plan was simple: confront Aaron with the truth, expose his manipulation, and take back control of the family empire. But nothing was ever simple with Aaron. No matter how well they thought they knew him, the man was a master manipulator, and Emma couldn't shake the feeling that they were walking right into his trap. Just as she was about to call Jin, the door creaked open, and he stepped inside. His face was pale, his expression tense. She stood up, heart racing, as she saw the urgency in his eyes. "We need to go," Jin said, his voice urgent. "Aaron knows we're coming. He's making his move tonight. We don't have much time." The words hit Emma like a blow to the chest. Everything they had worked for, everything they had planned, was about to come crashing down. They had no more time to prepare, no more time to think. It was do or die. "Where is he?" Emma asked, her voice steady despite the whirlwind of emotions inside her. She knew this was it. This was the final stand. "He's at the family estate," Jin replied, his face set in grim determination. "He's making his final move. If we don't stop him now, he'll have everything. He'll destroy me, destroy us. Then, let's go," Emma said, her voice cold with resolve. The anger she had been carrying for so long began to ignite. The betrayal, the lies, all of it fanning the flames of the fire burning within her. She wasn't just fighting for Jin anymore. She was fighting for herself, for the future she had once believed in. And she wasn't going to let Aaron take that from her. Asterisk. The drive to the estate felt like an eternity. The roads blurred beneath them, the headlights cutting through the night as Jin drove with the kind of focus that only desperation could bring. Every inch of Emma's body was tense, her hands clenched tightly in her lap, every muscle primed for the confrontation she knew was coming. When they finally arrived, the estate loomed before them, massive, imposing, like a fortress. The windows glowed with the faint light of lamps inside, casting long shadows across the manicured grounds. Everything about this place screamed wealth, power, control. It was the perfect backdrop for Aaron's games. They parked a safe distance away and approached on foot, staying in the shadows, their breaths shallow in the cold night air. They had no backup, no plan beyond confronting Aaron face to face. But they both knew that this was the only chance they had left. As they neared the front door, it swung open, and Aaron appeared, his silhouette sharp against the light inside. He was calm, too calm, his hands in his pockets as he studied them with a look of quiet amusement. "I knew you'd come," Aaron said, his voice smooth, almost mocking. "You've been playing right into my hands the entire time. I've watched you struggle, Jin. Watched you think you were actually in control. But you've been a puppet, just like everyone else in this family." "It's over, Aaron," Emma said, her voice steady as she stepped forward. "You're done. We're taking everything from you. The truth is coming out tonight." Aaron's smile widened, but there was a darkness in his eyes that made Emma's blood run cold. "You think you can stop me? You think Jin can stop me? I've already won. The power is mine. Everything you've worked for, everything you've hoped for, it's mine now." He stepped closer, his expression hardening. "You don't get it, do you? You're nothing but a pawn in this game. You always have been. Not anymore, Jin said, his voice suddenly sharp with determination. The game ends tonight. The tension in the air was palpable, the silence hanging heavy as the three of them stood facing each other. But as Aaron took another step forward, Emma noticed something that made her stomach drop, a glint of metal in his hand. A gun. The realization hit her like a freight train. This wasn't just a fight for control, it was a fight for their lives. Without warning, Aaron raised the gun, pointing it directly at Jin. Emma's heart stopped, her breath caught in her throat. But before she could react, Jin lunged at Aaron, knocking the gun from his hand and sending them both crashing to the ground. There was a struggle, desperate and chaotic. As they fought on the ground, Aaron trying to break free, Jin holding him down with every ounce of strength he had. Emma watched, frozen for a moment, but then she rushed forward, her hand grabbing the fallen gun. She didn't hesitate. She aimed it at Aaron, her finger on the trigger. "It's over," Emma said, her voice steady and cold. "We're taking back control. This ends now."